Welcome to Inside Voice, your behind-the-scenes take on the $150 billion home care industry. Here, it's not about the loudest voices or even polished headlines. It's about real stories, real challenges, and real insights from those shaping care every day. Join us as we cut through the noise, explore trends, and uncover what it takes to truly make a difference of the lives of those we care about. Inside Voice. Today's guest didn't just study home care. She survived the trenches to build a blueprint for true operational freedom. At only 23, Tiffany stepped into a failing office and transformed it into a powerhouse, building north of $3.5 million before successfully exiting in 2018. Since then, she has spent nearly a decade coaching hundreds of owners to restructure, rebuild, and reclaim their time. She's a co-author of the brand new book, The Unfiltered Truth About Home Care, which reveals how your unique leadership style is either your growth engine or your ceiling. Tiffany, welcome to the Inside Voice. I'm pumped to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Ethan. So excited to be on with you.
Yeah, so you were gracious enough to give me early access to your book, The Unfiltered Truth About Home Care, that is to be published and go live for purchase May 13th, 2026, yep. Correct? And I gotta tell you, I read the whole thing, and Tiffany, we're just starting to get to know each other, but I'm proud of you. Like, this is first of all, I'm dyslexic. So for me to read an entire book is an accomplishment, and I did. And it's great content for owners, operators in this space. And I think we desperately needed something like this that is as meaty as the information you're offering the reader. So thank you. And I'm proud of you for writing this book.
Thank you. I've loved getting your feedback along the way. It's always nice to hear, especially because you were an owner yourself at one point. You said it resonated with me. If I look back when I was an owner, this could have been really helpful for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so before we dive into, and I want to really focus, yes, on your experience, Tiffany, of the home care, because I think that's valuable for our listeners. I mean, stepping into a failing office, transforming it, you obviously have some tangible insight that I think a lot of listeners are interested in. But I really want to focus on this podcast is the book, The Unfiltered Truth About Home Care, kind of like a sneak peek of what the readers will be getting. But before we do that, tell me something about yourself that you didn't talk about in this book, something about Tiffany Dutcher, whether it be a hobby, an unpopular opinion, a way you like to disconnect, that would surprise me and the listeners about you.
Well, I guess the thing that when I was younger, I was a competitive cheerleader, which if you're not from Texas, you might not know how big that is. I think it's growing all across the US. Mm-hmm. But I was super competitive, and I ended up on HBO Real Sports, where they did a whole special on is cheerleading really a sport or not? And yes, it is a sport if you're wondering. And so Brian Gumble came to my house, came to my school. So that was my first exposure before this podcast of being in front of the public eye.
That's awesome. Really cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. All right, let's dive into this. So in your book, you'd actually discuss, to start out, 4 key leadership styles. And one of the things I love about the book is you start out with that, and then you tether the whole operations of a home care agency into those leadership styles. And I'll start with this. I don't want to go on a monologue, but I think it's important for the listeners to understand, is I always looked at it as, my skill set is in sales and marketing, and I'm a quote unquote, let's say, driver. And so that's where I'm, but you take all the skill sets and you bring it through all the operations of it and how those attributes affect the way you do all the different roles of the business. So let's start out. What are the 4 different leadership styles you see and you talk about in your book, and why is it important for a leader to understand theirs?
Yeah. So first of all, and I want to go to, as you were the owner, you knew naturally you were good at sales, but you're also the owner. You're the CEO of your company. And so while we like to stay in one lane, we have to have our hands in every part of the business, right? we're leading the office staff. We might be leading sales, but we're also a part of the operations. And it's our job as the owner, CEO, to understand all of the business. And so our hands should be in everything, regardless of where we feel like we're the best fit, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And so when I was coaching owners, I really started seeing these patterns. And as I started looking at them, I built these buckets. And I ended up on 4 buckets. And the 4 different styles we have, and don't get me wrong, you're not stuck in a style. And Ethan, you said it yourself. I see myself as a driver. Sometimes I could see myself pulling in as a connector.
Yeah.
You're not stuck in a style, but you are going to have predominant traits that come out in each one of these styles. And so as I was coaching, I realized, okay, I can put my owners in one of these 4 buckets. And if I'm looking at where they're struggling with in the business, if I'm looking at where they're most successful in the business, where their blind spots are, I can really start narrowing it down where they can understand themselves, and I can coach them better based on the style. So I ended up with 4 different styles. The first one we can hit on is being the driver. And I am also a driver myself. And that was my first lesson as I jumped into a selling home care office. But, you know, drivers are very visionary. They're fix it fast, see the big picture, get wins, and get to the finish line no matter what the cost. And sometimes there are costs with that. And so, you know, the overlying the overlying theme with the driver is I'm going to do things fast. I'm going to do things bigger, better, faster than everybody else. But sometimes I leave my team in the dust.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So then we have our connector owners, and these are the owners who get out and they are so good at sales from the get-go. Sometimes they end up being the mayor of the town because they like everybody. Everybody likes them. Sometimes they have trouble asking for the business, but they are liked, they are known, they are at every event. But what happens with a connector in the office? Because they like everybody and they want everyone to like them too. These are the owners that have trouble getting people off the bus when they don't belong. You get tethered to people and you're more married to that than the outcomes of what the people are producing for your clients, for your caregivers, and for your business. And so, you know, connectors, those are your people. Those are the people who you walk into a room, they're charismatic. You go to a conference, they're the ones talking to everybody. You can spot them a mile away. But there are some shadow sides to a connector too that we can get into later. Then we have our methodical owners, and these are our very micro owners. Think system owners. I think in the book I say they have SOPs for their SOPs before they even start running their business, right? And what happens is when you're a micro thinker like that, you like to be in the details. You can become very risk adverse. And so what does that mean? Everything has to be perfect before I move forward. All the systems have to be in place before I can go make that sales call. Because if I get a client, then I don't have the back end ready to be able to hold it. While that might be true, there is some risk that has to be taken while growing your business. And so, you know, the methodical owners really, and we'll get into later what they can do, but, you know, put themselves higher and not so much in the micros sometimes to be able to push things forward. It feels uncomfortable and it's unnatural. And then we have our humanitarian owners, and these have to be my favorite owners. These are the ones that know how to take care of our clients, know how to take care of our caregivers. They are just good at it. They didn't need a training manual for it. They came into knowing how to put the mission forward. But a lot of times humanitarians cannot put structure around their mission. They can't see the structure. They don't know how, and they're just running on adrenaline of taking care of people. And these are the owners that actually have a really hard time asking for business, because if it were up to them, they would give the business away.
Yeah. I love this so much. Being a part of a franchise system of 60 plus owners, this is spot on. I don't know if this is just business in general, but in home care, these attributes, you're going to find yourself maybe having multiple, a little of each, but I mean, you are going to heavily lean to one of these 4, which is really cool to see. Tiffany, why is it important for an owner to know theirs and really dig into those attributes?
Yeah, so you can't change what you don't understand, right? And as leaders, we have to be leading our team. So while our styles help in so many areas of the business, there are also parts of the business that, and I always say the shadow side, of where things are going to struggle. And so to be able to run your business and be the leader you're called to be, you have to understand yourself. And it's not just understanding yourself to see where you're going to get caught up, but how does my team perceive me, feel me, and how do I grow them with my leadership style, with myself in mind? So it really comes down to self-awareness. I need to understand why I make the decisions I do. I need to understand why I hesitate when I should be moving forward.
Yeah.
I need to understand why I move forward so fast I forget who's behind me. That's right. Just depends on your style.
And one of the things that you attribute this to is when you don't know these things, we can start to see burnout. I think you have a really powerful point in your book. You say burnout does not come from doing too much, but from leading in ways that don't fit your leadership style. Where have you seen this play out? And I think you kind of just gave a couple answers, but can we kind of dive back into that? Where have you seen this play out for owner operators in the home care space?
Yeah, so for me, I'll start with an example of me. I'm a driver. I drive really hard until I crash and burn, and I don't see it coming. And so what that would look like is having a month or two where I'm just driving so fast. Then I leave to go on vacation, and my body gets sick right away because I've just driven myself past what I should have been able to do, and I didn't pay attention to the signs. And so for everybody, it's different. Humanitarians burn out, and I see them most often going to shifts all the time. You know, if somebody calls at 2 a.m. in the morning, instead of having structure behind them to get something staffed, they're the ones doing it themselves. And so eventually they burn out, and that's from a lack of structure. Connectors burn out because they are such people pleasers that they're constantly trying to make their team happy. They're constantly putting others before them, but they have to remember, what is my mission? It's to help seniors at the best way I can and to grow my business. Mission and business can be connected. I say that all the time. I think people think it's either or. And so I have to have the right people on the bus to be able to provide the best care and to be able to, honor our caregivers too, which we'll get to later. So burnout for them can come from keeping people on the bus too long that don't belong there. And so you have to just be aware of these patterns and know it. Doesn't sometimes make the decisions easier, but with the awareness, you can then change.
That's so good. In your book, you use the phrase bleeding behind the clipboard to describe the invisible psychological and operational toll of agency ownership. Something that I found interesting is you said industry owners often project polished CEO mode while privately drowning in the triage mode. Talk to me about the triage mode and why is that important for owners to understand?
Yeah, so the way we talk about triage mode versus leadership mode is, in leadership mode we talk about all the time is when you're working in the business. Triage mode is when the business is running you. And a lot of times when that it happens because we've let our style take over. And so we'll talk about the methodicals. They're so far in the weeds. They're so far in the details. They don't trust people to get things right. So they find themselves doing it themselves. And so all of a sudden you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to reach your, long-term goals, but you find yourself down at the bottom in triage mode, handling everything yourself. So when your default style takes over, you go to your natural inclinations. And so it happens so easily. And what we try to do in the book is say, listen, there are 4 ways you're going to go into triage mode, and it's with the 4 different styles. You need to be aware, and we give you the things to look for to know that it's happening so you can pull yourself back out of it. And I'm not saying that you stay in leadership mode all the time. I think in any business, it's easy to go from leadership mode to triage mode back up. But what we want to do is we want to know the signs a little bit earlier so we can prevent it from happening.
So good. And then you also mentioned the spiral. What does that look like for agency owners?
Yeah, the spiral looks like, not eating dinner with your family anymore, staying at the office all night, crying, and I'll use my example, crying at my son's baseball game. And so I've spiraled into this loop of I can't manage my business. The business is managing me. And I think as home care owners, and we say it all the time, it's one of the hardest businesses. We know that. It's 24/7. But once you get into that spiral and you can't find your way out of it, you need to wave the red flag. We got to figure out, okay, what's going on? How do I get out of this? And in the book, we just go so deep into, you find yourself spiraling. These are the steps you need to take to get out of it.
Yeah. One of the things that I think impacted me the most is you talk about how leaders hire individuals with a similar skill set. And I think this is really the overall theme of the book is understand your leadership styles, where you fit in, things that you're good at and enjoy, and then hire around you and help you fill in your gaps. But you talk about in the book, we don't do that as home care operators. We hire individuals as a driver who are drivers and connectors, and we just have one big team of running on, high octane. And that causes a lot of major gaps, which I think lead to the burnout, the triage, the spiral. Can you just talk about why do we do this and why is it important we hire outside of our skill set and our wiring?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's easier to hire what you know, right? So if you're a methodical, you're very detailed, those details matter to you. You're constantly looking at them. If you hire somebody who's not as detail oriented, you're watching every mistake that they're making. You exhaust yourself. Same for humanitarians. You hire somebody who has that heart, you see that mission, that drive in them to want to truly make a difference in people's lives. But that person doesn't know how to build structure around you, and neither do you. And so, then you have the connectors. And then here we are hiring, all of these social profiles, the people who are making our caregivers feel great, our clients feel great, but then we have no break making sure our compliance is taken care of. And then drivers, we just want all gas. If anything's slowing us down, we're snipping it. We're leaving that load behind us. And if you think about drivers, especially, our businesses usually take off the fastest. If you get an owner in, they're a driver, they're taking off 100 miles an hour. Something happens, they get an audit, your state comes in, they're having to look behind, and all of a sudden now they're having to play catch up in a way that they could have taken their handled a long time ago. And so I go through the book and I talk about this gas, glue, brake. And every agency needs all three of these. And what the gas is the gas is what's going to move you forward. This is going to put the wins on the board. It's going to open up relationships. They're always thinking, what is tomorrow going to bring? Not how can I function in today? And so when you're always looking forward, you always got that foot on the gas and you're driving things forward. That's where growth comes from. The glue is where we miss it a lot, and glue is so important. There's two different pieces of glue. So you have your operational glue and you also have your people glue. Operational glue is, think about your integrator, the person who can see systems, build systems, integrate it, and be the glue from maybe your vision down to what it needs to take to execute the task, the in between, to get the end result. Then you have your people glue, and these are the people who are connecting the culture, building that feel good. Caregivers love them, clients love them. And so that's a very important piece too. And then we have our breaks, and breaks are our compliance people. There are people who are doing payroll and billing, the financial stuff. They're slamming on the brakes saying, okay, we got to make sure all this stuff is taken care of down here so your bottom line's protected, not just the gas at the top line. And so it's really important when you're building, you think about, what do I need next? I'm the driver, I'm the gas, I'm pushing things forward, but what needs to happen beside me in order to build the structure to be able to scale?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so that's so good. And that's kind of where you, in the book towards the end, you start to bring all this together of these different leadership styles, and it kind of makes everything make sense. One of the things, Tiffany, that I think we bonded over to start our relationship was sales. And because you were out in the market, I was out in the market, and we were kind of talking about it. And I love the book because for me, as somebody in sales, that's kind of how you start it early on, is you start from the sales point of view. And one thing you say early on in chapter 5 is you say, until owners understand why they avoid sales in their own way, they will always find reasons to delay it. And the longer it's delayed, the heavier it feels to mend your relationships. You first have to reframe your sales mindset. Sales isn't a chore. It's a chance to showcase real humans doing real work. It's the fuel that powers caregiver retention, office rhythm, and loyal clients. What do you think is some of the most common reasons why we see owners and operators avoiding when we say sales? Let's talk about referral marketing sales, because that's what we're talking about here. Referral marketing.
Yeah. I mean, they're not comfortable doing it. It's the easiest thing to put to the side. They don't have enough capacity, but quite frankly, it's the only thing keeping your business alive. And so, you've got to change that story in your head to get to a place where you can have the help in the office that you require. You're going to have to stretch yourself a little bit, and you are going to have to find time to go out there and make these calls and get in front of people and share your mission. And this is what we talk about. Sales is not sales. It's your mission made forward. Talking about what you're doing to truly make a difference in these seniors' lives. It's your opportunity to showcase why you got into it, while connecting it to the needs of the referral sources. Yeah. But yes, I mean, all four owners do this a little bit differently. Drivers are out there fast. They meet everyone. The biggest issue with the driver is we get bored fast. We want newness and we want to open up new doors, and we forget the rhythm of building the relationships. So in your head, it's, I've got to go faster. I need more, referral relationships. The change that you have to make is, I need to be consistent. I need to find rhythm, and I need to stay in front of these same people, really building a deeper relationship. Deep is sometimes hard for drivers because we want to go fast.
Yes.
It goes against our wiring. For Methodicals, it's, I have to understand everything. Everything has to be ready in the office. I have to be able to staff a case when it comes. If there's any risk involved in going out and making a sales call and getting the client and I'm not ready, I can't go do it. I've had owners that are Methodicals, and they're sometimes my favorite to coach too. They want to know every single thing they're supposed to say out there on a sales call. They want to know what happens next. And I have to coach them on, you need to understand overall how we can help this referral source. And then you need to fill the conversation. And so just in your head saying, this is not risky. I know what I'm doing. I can have these conversations in a real way. I think it's huge for Methodicals. And then Humanitarians, they don't want to ask for referrals. Yeah. They feel like I don't know if it's the money. I don't know if it's and I said this earlier, if they could give it away for free, they would. That's right. But they give the absolute best care. If they can get one or two stories from the care they're already providing from the clients they have, they will get referrals just based on the extra mile they go for these clients and using it in a way to share how they serve clients in their mission.
Yeah. And then, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you use the word, first you have to reframe the sales mindset. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. The word is called sales, but what we're doing is we're providing valued resources to all these communities, right? And they all have individual pain points that home care can help address. And I think when you find again, like you say, your mindset on where you can fit in, that's when sales stops feeling like sales and starts to feel like relationship development, which is ultimately where you want it to be. Yeah, relationship and education. We're ultimately educating people on why home care matters, because it does. It is such a big piece of the puzzle. Give me a myth when it comes to sales. What's the biggest myth you believe when it comes to referral marketing? I mean, I think even though we get into this knowing the kind of pay structure that we're getting involved with, people can't afford our services. And so I think that's one barrier that a lot of people have to overcome, especially as they get out there and start talking and they hear 5 or 6 referral sources say, well, how much does it cost? What are families looking at? And I know that can get in the way of some owners as they start out there building these relationships. But when we think about home care, and it doesn't have to be forever, we can be the gap between what's next. And so reframing and retraining, these case managers on
why we are that, the middle person coming in to help them figure out where they're going next, I think is really helpful. One other thing I talk about in the book is, if we're providing good service, the sales will automatically happen. But that's not true. And yes, word of mouth does happen, but that cannot be our only referral source. And you actually have to do that right if you're going to make that happen. They don't just refer just because of the good service. You have to guide them. But I think the big thing is, if I'm providing good care, then my phone should be ringing. But if you're providing good care, you should be out there talking about the care that you're giving that's different than everybody else, and tell them or give them a reason why your phone should be ringing.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times people sit back and they think the sales will come to me.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
That's good. That's good. You got to showcase the work that you're doing to your community. And the thing is, it's not difficult. It's just doing it.
Oh yeah. Anything you do for the first time is hard the first time. The second time, it might get a little bit easier. By the 10th time, you know what you're up against, and it becomes second nature. And so it really is just pushing yourself, going to the gym. The first 2 months are really hard. It's really difficult to get in there. You don't know what you're doing, but by month 2, you're walking around like you own the gym. Same thing happens in sales.
Yeah. It's funny. We, in your book, we here at Preferred Care Home, we tell time by COVID. There's pre-COVID and then there's post-COVID. Kind of like how we tell time with Jesus. But pre-COVID, caregiver recruiting was completely different, right? You had caregivers knocking on your door. You were operating back then, where in 2018, where there was, caregivers ultimately, they could be a means to an end, right? You could use them until they burned you, then you just find somebody else because there was a ton of applicants. Post-COVID, and owners that launched their agencies after 2020 never experienced that, Tiffany. They're only experiencing this world of competition towards caregivers. So I think this is twofold. I think for a lot of owners that are still maybe stuck in that pre-COVID mindset, I think your book reshapes their view on what caregiver retention ought to look like. And you talk about how it's not just about throwing together a pizza party for them, but we need to treat our caregivers as if we're treating them like they're our clients. What are some ways that you're seeing through your coaching agencies do this extremely well?
Yeah, so when I talk about this in the book, I'm really big on hospitality. So when I talk about home care, when you think about walking into the Ritz-Carlton or a 5-star hotel, what kind of welcome do you get? Do they know your name? Are they excited that you're there? Do they want to show you where the amenities are and how to get around the hotel? It's a different experience. And because, like you said, we don't have the floodgates open anymore of caregivers coming, we've got to figure out, how do we make them feel like this is the agency they want to be at? And so what that looks like is, opening up our doors like we're a 5-star hotel. That starts with our job posting. What is in the job posting? Are we putting our mission forward? How do we sound different than all of these other agencies? Then it goes to, the immediate text that they get, because a lot of us are set up on, we know it's, the fastest person to them wins. What does that text say? Hey, we got your application. We're so glad you applied. Or welcome to our home care agency. Here, we have a mission, to move you forward and to advance you in your career. And so it's opening up that line of communication with them where they feel like they're wanted, and not like we, just need them to fill a seat. And I think that happens so much. That then comes into play, in the first interview. It comes into play in how we orient them. We have to make it a positive experience for them because they have tons of options out there.
Yeah, and I think I love how you reframe retention as something that starts on the actual job posting, the caregivers, because we always hear this when it comes to our client visits or our referral marketing visits, is you can't change a first impression, and that's one of the most important things. And you're saying it also applies to caregivers. What is their first impression, giving that kind of Ritz-Carlton experience when you walk in the door? I love that. If you don't mind kind of zooming in a little bit deeper, when it comes to post-interview, what are some things that you've seen to be super, super helpful for agencies to consider when it comes to caregiver retention in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of the owners that I'm coaching have a caregiver experience coordinator, which I
Hmm.
think is great. So that person's, overseeing the onboarding period. They're holding their hand the first 2 weeks. They're calling to check on them, and they're asking them, "Do you have any other needs? Any training needs? Are there anything else that we can help you with?" To make your time here at our agency better. And so I think that that makes a big difference. I think that it's an easy addition to the team, and caregivers feel seen and heard and valued. A
Much.
lot of times, if you think about when a caregiver goes and works in a hospital, they're onboarded, they're trained. Now they have supervisors and they're under one building. When they come on with us, we interview them, they go through an orientation, and they never see us again.
Yeah. And they can, and this is the scariest part, Tiffany. I always say this, is that they could never see us again. And if they never see us again and they're still working for us, that's because they're doing a good job, because they can operate on island because they're clocking in and clocking out. The client likes them. And so sometimes our best caregivers have the least amount of touch points with our agency, which is actually the saddest part of this whole thing, right? And so I think that's a really good point. I love that. Much like we have client service directors, that's a common role, right? Visiting your clients, making sure they're happy, doing all that. Hey, we should make a caregiver experience role just as common, because it's equally as important.
Well, and let me tell you what happens when we do this. When we teach them and show them what hospitality looks like, we ingrain it into how we onboarding. We talk about it in our orientation. They're now in front of our clients and they know what real hospitality looks like. We're now giving them a higher level of care because they're mirroring what we're showing them.
I love it. It's true. Absolutely true. And there's a pride for where they work.
Yes.
And that's where the caregiver referrals from their friends are going to start to come into play. It turns it a little bit into more of an avalanche effect or snowball effect. Once you start doing these little things, it adds up, right? We always say there's no silver bullet, which may be good news because no one's going to get lucky on this. It's about doing the little things right. And that goes for really all areas of this business, but particularly caregiver recruiting.
Well, and then I want to tie in really quick the 4 styles to this and what happens with the caregiver onboarding. The driver they are truly speed to hire. And so as soon as I get somebody hired, get them on a shift, and now I'm, billing for hours, they're getting paid, I'm good. They miss the part of the culture building in there naturally because they're just moving so fast. And so that's an opportunity for them to step back and bring people in who can build that caregiver opportunity around them. The methodical owners are so busy making sure that caregivers know their logins, passwords, know how to document correctly, which is all important, that they forget also the experience part of it in building the relationships. And so these are things to remember as you're thinking about your owner types. The humanitarians, they make everyone feel like family, but they don't give the caregivers any structure. They're the ones not giving them the logins, passwords, and showing them how to document. They're showing them how to, provide loving care, but without systems and structure. And now the caregivers are lost, thinking, where do I go? Who do I talk to? Calling the owner at 10 o'clock at night saying, how do I log in? And so, I mean, it's different. It's different between the 4 different owners. And so that's what I love about this book is we say, hey, this is so important, but understand where your blind spots are going to be in this process.
Yeah, and I think we talked off the air, and I was saying as a driver, that caregiver experience you were describing as the caregiver using their purse, like they just filled in an ad, and now they're thrown into a shift. No one's there to do the introduction. They're kind of clutching under the purse as a human shield because they're walking into a home. The daughter's running out the door. And you really start to see the environment where your leadership styles affect your care team as well.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we had work, right? But the thing is, and maybe like someone who's the different leadership style may not have as much work as we had, but they had somebody there to walk them through on the first days. And so it's really, I think you make it come to life of the actual attributes of these different leadership styles and how it affects everybody else on the team. Last question for you, Tiffany. You say, stop scaling a sandcastle. For me, I felt like that hit home. And I believe for a lot of owner operators, it hits home for them. A lot of us feel like, using a different phrase, maybe sometimes our agency is built off a house of cards. What is one tangible thing an owner who feels like they're scaling a sandcastle can do right now to change that?
Yeah, so we can all start with the same systems, be handed the same playbook, which I give, but ultimately people run systems and people run offices. So as I've developed in my coaching and in my career, what I've realized is 80% of business problems are people problems. And so, A, you have to understand yourself as a leader and your style, but B, we have got to make sure we have the right people in the right seats to be able to perform and provide the care that we're supposed to. So for me, it would be evaluating gaps in your team and stop making excuses for why things are just the way they are. I think it ultimately comes down to people.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's the whole theme of the book. Understand your leadership style. Don't hire the same leadership style or same skill sets you are providing. Outsource that. Build together a great care team. Fill in the gaps. And ultimately, stop scaling a sandcastle. And I love it. Tiffany, if people want to work with you, what are you doing now? Let's give you some plugs. What's your current adventure right now?
Yeah, so what I am is I'm an organizational advisor. And what I do is I work with CEOs and owners to be able to build the right teams around them using real data in order to hit their growth goals. And so what we're doing is not only are we putting the right people in the right seats, we're also looking at the gaps in the agency and where we need to put people that are wired correctly to be able to help grow the agency. And so when you start looking at it from that viewpoint, you start getting people who are wired correctly, things start running the way they're supposed to. And so what I do is I get a bird's eye view. We look at the data, we see what's happening, and then we start building the organization that's going to grow with you.
So good. Kind of follows along with this book. This book, as this podcast air, is out, available for purchase on Amazon and other platforms. If you're a home care owner, operator, in my opinion, I think it's a must read. What Tiffany will also do for you, if you wanted to continue her services, is she'll make this book come to life in your own agency, which I love. It's like the second piece to this. If they wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to do it? Email, LinkedIn? How do you prefer connection?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn under Tiffany Dutcher, or my email is tdutcher@cultureindex.com. And if you are interested in looking at your team, I do offer a complimentary team diagnostic. So what we would do is take a deep dive into your team to look at what's happening, and you can really see the data behind what you're feeling that your gut's telling you, or what's preventing you from growing. So I'm going to provide you, Ethan, with a survey link that people can take. You'll put it in the show notes. Once I get that, I can sit down with you, show you your data, and go over your survey with you. It's going to be eye-opening. Everybody likes to learn about themselves. And then we can take it from there, and I can show you the rest of your team.
Yeah, let me plug that for a second. I don't want this going for too long, but let me plug that for a second. You did mine, and you got to see my attributes, and you were telling me all my personality traits, and they're spot on. And yeah. I love how you have the data of saying, okay, but this is you're best in this role, which is the role I was in. But maybe and you were like, a scheduler would look more like this bell curve, and a recruiter would look like this bell curve, a client. And so you have all the different personality traits, and in home care, the roles they should have. That free diagnosis that you're offering, everyone, absolutely everybody should do. So that's just a shameless plug for you, Tiffany, on what you're offering the home care community. Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight. Go get you the book, The Unfiltered Truth About Home Care, by Tiffany Dutcher and Gregory Bean. It is a great read, and honestly a must read if you're in the home care industry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, hitting that like button really helps the channel grow. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a drop. We're here every other Wednesday at 8 a.m. sharp. See you in the next one. Inside Voice.